We've gotten to a point in the world, and especially in our community, that all of our actions are viewed through the lens of the woman instead of the lens of us. And other groups of men having to protect their paternity, their resources, their this, their that. I mean, we've seen this, we've seen the numbers, we've seen people who signed birth certificates, who got a DNA test later, found out they wasn't even his kid and still on child support.
Check out my podcast episodes. These are 4 episodes on Red Circle, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Google Podcasts. Check me out, everybody. You'll like what you hear.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, King Nigel of Alpha Male Diaries. Today, I'm going to have a very, very interesting topic, and it's about paternity involving children and men that's paying child support for children that's not even theirs. You know, fellas, a lot of guys, they don't want to go through the DNA test because they feel as if, they'd be bashed or they'd be called names, oh, you sucker, or, the baby mother say, oh, you don't trust me. We've seen these things happen throughout many times of our lives, throughout even involving ourselves or other people that we may know. But why is society so stuck on just believing what women say at face value versus what men say? It's like we have to prove everything we say. But because it's a woman, oh girl, really, he did what? Yeah. A woman know the whole time that she slept with somebody else. Disregarding STDs and all that. But first, before I go on, I'd like to thank everyone for supporting my podcast and my YouTube channels. And please hit the notification bell. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. The 100,000 to come maybe a couple months, years down the line. But yeah, I really appreciate the support. And I also give a big shout out to Kevin Samuels, Lapeef Network, and its panel. But ladies and gentlemen, I got something to show you guys, boy. And it's huge.
Sadly, we've gotten to a point in the world, and especially in our community, that all of our actions are viewed through the lens of the woman instead of the lens of us. And other groups of men having to protect their paternity, their resources, their this, their that. I mean, we've seen this, we've seen the numbers, we've seen people who signed birth certificates, who got a DNA test later, found out they wasn't even his kid and still on child support. We got thousands of stories like this. But nothing seems to, but it always seems to be, it's offensive to women. When, if you can understand that you don't have the doubt, men do. That's the only thing I never understood. So that's kind of why I wanted to kind of chime in. And then one of the men earlier said that I wouldn't do it. It was almost like he was virtue signaling. It's like, I wouldn't do it because I should have to pick a woman this way and that way, and I wouldn't want to make her feel this way and that way. And I'm like,
about the paternity test and the prenup and all that.
Right. And it's something to say until you really have something on the line. I mean, and no offense, but the numbers get bigger and the more risk out there. There's a reason this thing exists, and it's not to be a punitive measure. So I think the better solution would be, honestly, because we don't run our own image.
I'm going to pause it right here, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Samuel does have a point. We're not looked at based upon the image that we give ourselves. It's the image that others give us, how we perceive in other individuals' eyes. We're being judged and everything like that. You understand what I'm saying? And it's crazy because we, as men, we got to work so hard just to even be considered to be respected, depending on how much money we have, the things we have, based on materialism stuff. Even in a situation like this, a guy could be bashed for not taking care of a child because he just knew, based on the timeline himself, when he slept with it, that the child isn't his, and, they go get a DNA test all of a sudden. You are not the father. And then they be cussing you out and everything. They won't even apologize for that shit. It's their fault. They open their legs to somebody else. Back to the show.
If it's really, you need to know, get the child tested in secret if it's going to cause issues. But if you know things like this matter, it's up to us as men to learn how to communicate effectively our standards and our expectations of the kind of women we deal with, and not get ourselves in a position to where you're going to have these kind of issues with women. That's why I can kind of see where the women were coming from, where we talk about the communication. But if you're already married and y'all find out. But here's the real question. What do women say when it comes back that it's not the man's child? Because it's anywhere from 2 to 30%. We don't talk about that. We talk about the guys who want to take the test, and we want to interrogate that. We never get to the other side. So that's why I'm kind of
Point. Why is it like that? Why is it always on the man? It's the burden's always on the man, And these guys be taking, man, listen, crazy.
I was listening to the conversation. So I'm going to leave that right there and kind of let it for the rest of the panel. I'm going to fall back and kind of listen and chime in, though.
You know what, Kevin?
Huh?
I'm not sure how long you've been watching, but I don't think there's any issue with a man wanting a DNA test. It should just be the thing that I think it should just be protocol. In terms of what would happen if the baby ends up not being the alleged father's child, I think that woman would have a lot of explaining to do, and the man, of course, he can choose to do whatever he wants. Like, I wouldn't be mad if somebody left if they found out that that's not their
You
child.
can't, okay? You can't. If your name's on that birth certificate.
Oh, you're saying like after the fact if they
you're still legally responsible for it. You're still legally responsible.
So Kevin,
even outside the marriage.
Kevin, maybe you know more about this and you can explain a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So if a couple, let's say they're not married, and the man gets his name on the birth certificate and he thinks he's the father, and let's say 6 months later they take a paternity test, he's not the father. What happens and what are the legal ramifications of that situation?
6 months you may be able to get 6 months you may be able to, depending upon when the sooner the better. 6 months, it's a possibility, but 2 or 3 years,
yes, sir,
you're paying child support. There's case law in Michigan, Illinois, Texas, throughout this country where men have proven, because they didn't want to test while they were in a relationship, but they tested after, shows that all the kids, and they're still responsible. You got men in jail because they fell behind paying child support for kids that aren't theirs, and they've been trying to get their name off, and the court said, well, you assume the responsibility, and the child looks at you as the father, so it's in the best interest of the child. This is why I challenge everybody to go sit in family court for at least 2 or 3 Tuesdays and just listen to some of this stuff.
Follows. You are shaking.
I know.
I feel your nervousness from here. Are you okay?
I'd like to pause it right here for a second before I start this episode of Paternity Court. I know a few guys who, when they gave us them stimuluses a while back, those stimulus checks, and those guys was proven not to be the fathers. And, they was going back and forth trying to get their, name taken off the birth certificate and all that. Even sometimes women just said that he was the father, and, they just put the name on there, kid get his last name and everything. And, they took those dudes checked. And when they filed again to get it under the rebate recovery credit, whatever that was, they took that too. Ladies and gentlemen, back to the show. They dogging this man out.
I just want to get it out there. I want to know the truth. She deserves it. She deserves everything.
In the case of Benning versus Bodine, when it comes to 23-month-old Robin Benning, it has been determined by this court. Mr. Benning, you are not the father.
Well, see how vicious these people are? And these women vicious, man.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's
They
go,
want to get
Mark.
mad. When you want to
Let's
take
go,
them to
Mark.
court,
When it
man.
comes to
Save
11-week-old
that kid yours.
Annabelle, Shay, you are not.
Ooh, Lord. Look at her. Look at her. She went into that touchdown, boy.
My ex-wife got pregnant. She had a child, and she had chosen to just kind of keep it away from me, or kind of keep it on the low, or whatever.
I'm gonna pause this for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I had quite a few women asking me, why it just seemed like some of the stuff that the podcast on is all negative. It's about always about guys, this, that, and the third, or whatever. You don't see anything positive about it. And it wasn't nothing personal. It's just that I just advocate for men. For the equality of men. I mean, to help us protect ourselves as well. We don't really have that, that many protections, man. So we gotta stay together some way, somehow. You gotta start somewhere. And speaking, having a voice, they get you somewhere. A closed mouth don't get fed.
And I kind of acted like I didn't see. I mean, like you see somebody growing out here. Anyway, I'm at my daughter's birthday party. Everybody's congratulating me, and so I'm like, congratulate my mother. I'm like, that ain't mine. Anyway, I'm leaving with my daughter, and I get a phone call. She's like, hey, by the way, I think I have a son by now. I'm like, yeah, I've heard. Well, your name's on this birth certificate, and you need to deny it, or you're going to be responsible for child support. And I said, who wasn't aware now? Yeah. See, what happens if a woman goes to have a child at the hospital, they ask you if you're single, married, or divorced. And if you say divorced, they're going to ask you when the divorce was final. If the divorce has been final for 11 months or less, the husband's name goes on the birth certificate automatically. And it is the husband's responsibility, the ex-husband's responsibility to deny it in writing within 30 days, or you become the legal father of that child.
In the case of 2-month-old Keelan, Sean,
see, I'm gonna pause right here for a second. And this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. When they said, how women cheat in different ways, that they would cheat, and listen, they go hard, man, and then it's alimony and child support involved in these divorces and everything, man. Your money going to a kid that's not even yours, just screwing up your whole legacy. That's crazy. And then nothing is done. Men get put in prison, for not paying child support for a kid that's not even theirs, but they don't have any legal ramifications for a woman for basically forging a document. I mean, the man may say, hey, it is mine, but the woman initiated by giving that child that man's last name, because they choose whoever they feel the best father would be for that child. It's all about benefits, man. This shit crazy. You gotta be more careful.
So that's how it's gonna be.
Get out my face!
Huh?
Move around!
You like $2, that's the last one you would get
I
from
don't
me.
care! Get out my
That's
face!
everything I've done for you.
Back up! Give me some room!
Well,
Come
not
on,
crazy,
man!
huh? No, thank you for what I have done. None of that.
Thank you!
Excusing me that you not.
Look, ain't no sorry. I apologize. Nothing.
Now go pick up the $2 that I left like a $2 whore that you are.
Blood clot. To conclude the show, I'm your host, King Nigel of Alpha Male Diaries. But wait, y'all know I put my 2 cents in. Fellas, you gotta be careful in selecting these women that you laying down with. It's not always about lust. It's not always about fat titties and big asses and everything like that, man. You know what I mean? Well, big titties and fat asses. Y'all know what I mean. But at the end of the day, man, because that woman will have a big impact on your life, especially when it's involving a child. And then you married, you left without a choice, bro. And think about it. 80% of the women in our community leave or end their marriages file for divorces and all that. Come on, man. But thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, King Nigel of Alpha Male Diaries. You might like what I say, you might not, but I don't give a fuck. And I'm out. Thanks for watching. Remember to follow me on my podcast platforms as well as YouTube, and join my Facebook group, Alpha Male Diaries. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening, and have a blessed night.